Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to the Piedmont Unitarian Universalist Church. Piedmont UU sits on the traditional land of the Catawba, Kiowa, and Sugaree peoples. We honor them. My name is Robin Mara, and I'll be worship assistant today for Reverend Dr. Amy Rio. We are a flourishing, vibrant, and radically welcoming congregation which promotes diversity, inclusion, and social justice. We provide a safe haven for creative intellectual growth, spiritual development, and a deep sense of community for all who join us. We hope our liberal religious values will challenge you to join us as a community that lives boldly and acts justly. To all our visitors and members, we're very glad you're here today in person or with us online, and we hope to see you again. Your presence is a gift to us. We have some announcements for this Sunday. Today is Pride Sunday, and our Rainbow Group has worked with Reverend Amy in planning today's service. And we're pleased to have Dr. Dawn Schmitz as our guest speaker today, and Amy will tell us more about her in a little while. And now I'd like to invite Gio up. He has a special announcement for us, too.
I just wanted to, my name's Gio, for the record. Remind you that we are doing a survey this month, the Rainbow Group is, and we'd like to get everyone to fill it out. It's at the top of on the back of your bulletin, so please, we need your input. Thank you.
And our Summer Solstice observance is this Tuesday at 7 p.m. with doors opening at 6:30, and everyone's invited to join us. We'll have a blood drive next Sunday after the service, so check your email for more information about that and if you'd like to donate. And for other important information about our vibrant community, or please see your order of service, or if you're on our email list, please check our monthly announcements, our monthly newsletter, and weekly announcements. Whatever brought you to this place at this hour, we welcome you. May you find something you need, and may you leave richer in spirit than when you arrived.
We light the flame of our chalice as a symbol of all the colors of the rainbow, and as a reminder that all are welcomed and loved here. As a reminder that the divine light shines within each person, and as a reminder that this light can never be extinguished. Please join me now in singing the words to lighting our chalice, the symbol of our faith.
please rise and body or spirit as you're able. People sometimes ask, is pride a protest or a party? And the answer is, of course, yes. And why not? Why not rejoice as we resist, dance as we demand change, celebrate as we create community that delights in all of who we are?
So bring all of that with you this morning. Bring your policy demands, bring your glitter, bring your Supreme Court broken heart, bring your rainbow socks, bring the emptiness you feel for our siblings gone too soon.
Bring your Gloria Estefan remix. Bring your tender hope for change. Bring your most garish eyeshadow. Bring your spirit, tattered and battered by a world that seems insistent on choosing fear and hate.
Gather up all these things and bring them here to a place where we don't have to shoulder these burdens or celebrate these joys alone.
Come, let us worship together.
I invite you to please remain standing as you would like to do so. And our first hymn is found in our great hymnal, number 295, Sing Out Praises for the Journey. Please be seated. And now Eric Dutton from our Rainbow Group is going to come forward with our children's time, time for all ages.
So I can articulate. Good morning. So I've got a cute little story that I love myself today called Worm Loves Worm by J.J. Austrian. Worm loves worm. Let's be married, says worm to worm. Yes, answered worm. Let's be married. Wait, says cricket. You'll need someone to marry you. That's how it's always been done. I'll marry you. Now can we be married? asks worm. Wait, says beetle. You've got to have a best beetle. Naturally, that would be me. Now can we be married? asks worm. Wait, say the bees. You need bride's bees. Can we be the bride's bees? Please, please, please. Yes, says worm. Now can we be married? You'll need to get rings to wear on your fingers, says cricket. That's how it's always been done. But we don't have fingers, says worm. We can wear them like belts, says worm. Wonderful, says worm. Now we can be married. Just make sure to have a band so we can dance, says beetle. But we don't have feet to dance with, says worm. Oh, we can just wiggle around, says worm, like this. Fun, says worm. Now we can be married. But you still need a white dress, a tuxedo, a top hat, lots and lots of flowers, and a cake with frosting, says the bees. But we don't have heads for hats, says Worm, or hands to hold flowers. And we only eat dirt, says Worm. Wait, says Spider, I can attach the hat and flowers to you with my sticky web. Oh, thank you, say Worm and Worm. But who will eat the cake? Asked the bees. I can eat the cake along with Spider, Cricket and Beetle, says Spider. What did you say? Asked Cricket and Beetle. Nothing, says Spider with a smile. Now we can be married, says Worm. But which one of you is the bride? Asked the bees. How can we be brides bees if we don't know who the bride is? I can be the bride, says Worm. I can too, says Worm. But one of you has got to be the groom, or how can I be best beetle? Asks Beetle. Oh, I can be the groom, says Worm. I can too, says Worm. We can be both. Amazing, says Spider. Really? Asked Beetle and the bees. Wait, says Cricket. That isn't how it's always been done. Ah, then we'll just change how it's done, says Worm. Yes, says Worm. And so they were married, because Worm loves Worm.
Thank you for being here. I really like how the book says we don't have to do what's always been done. We can forge a new way as we are called to do so. And we can do that every day. What a wonderful opportunity for us as we gather this morning. So at this time, we are entering to our time of ritual and sacred sharing. We share our joys, our sorrows, concerns, and milestones. We have already lit our candles for Pride as we observe Pride Month and in solidarity with all of our LGBTQIA plus siblings. We light a candle for Mary, who is having her gallbladder removed tomorrow. For the family of Jeremiah Gibbons, Jeremiah was married to Ann L's niece up in, I believe, Baltimore. They had 3 young children, and he died this past Friday. So we want to keep all of them in our thoughts. Light a candle for the ongoing struggle for civil rights in Iran. For all who are suffering in Gaza and for immediate assistance for those who are suffering so greatly there. For all areas of violence around the world, especially Haiti, the Sudan, the Middle East, and the war in Ukraine. Now, at this time, you are welcome to come forward as you feel called to do so. You may come along the far aisle beside the wall. There is a prayer rack. You may write a prayer of joy or concern or celebration and place on the prayer rack. Robin will hand you a candle if you would like to light your own candle. She'll hand you the candles. Yes, I guess the candle to light. So, or you may simply place a stone in our shared water. So you are invited to come forward at this time. will now enter into a time of quiet rest, meditation, or prayer. And during this time of silence, I invite you, as you deepen your breath, become more present with this time and space, to imagine that the colors of the rainbow are all around you. And I invite you simply to rest within these colors, to absorb their brilliance and their celebration.
Today's wisdom reading is by Jodi Picoult from the novel Sing You Home. There's a subtle difference between tolerance and acceptance. It's the distance between moving into the cul-de-sac and having your next door neighbor trust you to keep an eye on her preschool daughter for a few minutes while she runs out to the post office. And it's the chasm between being invited to a colleague's wedding with your same-sex partner and being able to slow dance without the other guests whispering.
So today is a wonderful day with our Pride worship service, and so excited that everyone can be with us today, whether in person or online. We have a special guest speaker, Dr. Don Schmitz, who is the curator of rare books and manuscripts at J. Murray Atkins Library at UNC Charlotte, just down the road. She has worked in academic libraries and archives for 20 years. Before that, she was a graduate student, a reporter for an LGBTQ newspaper, and a food co-op worker. Born and raised in Minnesota, she has moved around the country a lot, residing in 8 different states during her adult life before finally settling in Charlotte 12 years ago. She and Holly Middleton were married October 14th, 2014, the first day same-sex marriage was legal in Mecklenburg County. They live here in this neighborhood of our church, and they're active members of Holy Covenant UCC, United Church of Christ, just down the road. And we're excited to have both Don and Holly here with us today. And Dr. Schmitz, we look forward to hearing from you.
Reverend Amy, thank you so much for inviting me here today. It's so great to be here with everybody. You've all been so welcoming, and it's just wonderful to be here for your service today. In the few minutes we have together, I'd like to tell you a little bit about what we do at Atkins Library at UNC Charlotte to preserve and share the history of the local LGBTQ+ community. And I'll let you know how we came to be involved in these efforts, what the work looks like, and share some thoughts on why we think it's important and meaningful. But first, a little bit more about how I came to be here in Charlotte doing this type of work. I decided to be an archivist right around the year 2001. I was at the University of Pittsburgh working on getting a PhD in media history and cultural studies. My dissertation was on the history of advertising, and one summer I found myself in Washington, D.C. at the National Museum of American History at the Smithsonian with a research fellowship. I spent my time that summer in the archives reading room at the museum, and I was even allowed behind the scenes where the curators worked. I learned that the archives is where they keep the raw materials of history. And I enjoyed my time there so much, I just wanted to spend all my time in the archives. So I looked into what additional schooling I would need to do that, and as luck would have it, Pitt had a master's program in library and information science with a concentration in archives management. So I ended up finishing both my PhD in media and cultural studies and a master's in archival studies the very same year. Not something I would recommend. Honestly, it's all a blur, but I guess I learned stuff because I came out of there in 2004 with 2 diplomas. I also met the love of my life at Pitt. Holly, who's here today, was a PhD student in English composition there. So starting in 2004, when she was working on her dissertation and I had finished my degrees, we began moving around the country for various jobs, taking turns being the trailing spouse, until we finally settled in North Carolina and both got jobs. So that's how I came to work at UNC Charlotte in 2012. I started at Atkins Library in a role where I was responsible for digital projects, and 2 years later I moved up to a position as head of the Department of Special Collections and University Archives. I had that job for almost 10 years until about 3 months ago when I stepped down from that administrative role to take a position as curator. I wanted to make the change from head of the department to curator in order to be able to channel more energy to directly serving our mission, to engage with the local community to preserve and share the history of the Charlotte region, which is what I'd like to spend the rest of our time telling you about. Atkins Library has had this mission for more than 50 years now. Around 1973, the library began collecting donations of archives from people, families, and organizations who have helped shape the history and culture of Charlotte and the surrounding region. This work has traditionally involved engaging with potential donors and determining whether our stewardship of their papers or records is a good fit for both parties. If so, then the work begins, clearing out filing cabinets and retrieving boxes stashed in garages and attics or under the bed. And in recent years, the work has also come to involve copying hard drives, capturing websites, and other ways of corralling digital stuff. And it has also come to include other ways of engaging with community partners, such as doing oral history projects or borrowing materials to digitize them and then returning them to the community. In those cases when we do assume custody of the materials, we take the necessary measures to ensure they're preserved and made available to the community to use, learn from, and enjoy. By doing this over the course of 50 years, Atkins Library has built very rich collections documenting many aspects of the history of our region. The Civil Rights Movement, desegregation, especially in terms of busing for school integration, city planning and development, stock car racing, like NASCAR, and the textile industry, and the arts, to name a few. In the years I have been there, we have also built rich collections in areas such as photojournalism, the Jewish community, and of course, the LGBTQ+ community. With respect to our LGBTQ+ collections, the credit for getting this all started goes to a man named Joshua Burford, who is an archivist, historian, and activist. In 2013, Josh worked at UNC Charlotte in a role where he was teaching history and supporting LGBTQ+ students. He approached the library with the idea that he would go out and talk to folks in the Charlotte LGBTQ community who may be interested in donating materials. Then the library would preserve these materials and provide access to them. This fit perfectly with what we do, or what we aim to do, is collect archives documenting the history of Charlotte in all its diversity. So Josh began this collecting work, and in 2015, we dedicated the LGBTQ+ collections to 3 prominent local activists: Donaldson Wells King, Sue Henry, and Blake Brockington. The title for my message today, To Unite, Empower, and Build Community, is from the invitation Josh wrote to that event, which marked the founding of the King Henry Brockington LGBTQ+ archive. 3 years later, in 2018, Josh moved to Alabama to found the Invisible Histories Project, which works to preserve LGBTQ archives in the Deep South. And we at Atkins Library continued the work here in Charlotte. We now have around 50 LGBTQ+ archival collections. Each one represents an individual person or organization who donated their archival materials. A lot of these materials date back to the 1980s, with the bulk probably from the 1990s forward. But there are some that go back to the 1970s, and they continue all the way through the recent years. These archives include the personal papers of activists and organizers, journalists, writers, educators, and creatives. The types of materials in these collections of personal papers include letters, photographs, ephemera like flyers, posters, and t-shirts, and video recordings. To give one example of such a collection, Sue Henry, one of the namesakes of the King Henry Brockington collection, is a lesbian activist who owned a bookstore in town, Rising Moon Books and Beyond. It was open from 1991 to 1997. Having foresight, Sue kept everything that was tacked up on the community bulletin board and laid out for folks in that bookstore to pick up. These leaflets, flyers, newsletters are now preserved in the archives. And when you open a box containing them, you can still detect the faint aroma of the incense that was burning in that lesbian bookstore. Talk about being transported back 30 years. We also have the records of a range of community organizations involved in the realm of politics, performing arts, social services, and beyond. You may recognize some of them. To give a few examples: the Regional AIDS Interfaith Network, or RAIN, Time Out Youth, and One Voice Chorus. There are also religious organizations, pride groups, bars and restaurants. Many of these organizations and businesses are no longer around, such as the LGBT Community Center of Charlotte, which existed from 1999 to 2014. The records of these organizations often include things like meeting minutes, reports, and newsletters, the types of records that help us understand their programs, projects, and priorities. In addition to these types of unpublished materials I've been describing, we also have books, newspapers, and magazines. For example, many of you may be familiar with Q Notes, a newspaper you can pick up around town or read online. We have issues going all the way back to its origins in the mid-1980s. And we have worked with Q Notes publisher Jim Yarbrough and the North Carolina Digital Heritage Center, which is in Chapel Hill, to digitize the full run of the newspaper. You can find it online at digitalnc.org. And we're really excited about this project because often community newspapers are digitized by for-profit companies, and they're put behind paywalls to be made available only to those affiliated with a research university. But Q Notes is freely available online for anybody. The most recent publication we've acquired is the first 2 issues of Transparent, a magazine by and for trans women of color that is published here in Charlotte. And we also have a related oral history collection, the Charlotte Queer Oral History Project, which got started around the same time as the archives. We have interviews with about 50 individuals online and more in the hopper. My colleague Tina Wright did many of the interviews and engaged with the community to support their own efforts to conduct oral histories. Folks from many walks of life have been interviewed: community leaders, activists, drag artists, business owners, students, you name it. These archives and oral history interviews provide a window into the history of LGBTQ+ life and community in Charlotte. A critical aspect of these archives, and one reason we feel the work is so meaningful, is that they represent the stories, records, and papers of the LGBTQ+ organizations and people themselves. Without these types of archives and interviews, queer history can only be found in police reports, mainstream newspapers, the records of elected officials, and the like. And need it be said that these official records often reflect negative perspectives on LGBTQ plus people, characterizing us as deviants or even worse. Contrast these establishment sources with the records of the community itself, which reflect our struggles, pain, perseverance, joy, and humanity. Yet it also must be acknowledged that these archives are not complete or exhaustive. They contain what we call archival silences. These are the yawning gaps in the historical record. These silences can occur because records were never created or they weren't saved. For example, during the height of the AIDS crisis in the 80s and 90s, many personal archives were discarded by the families of origin of people with HIV due to ignorance and fear of contamination. And of course, members of the LGBTQS community themselves at the time may not have fully grasped the moment's historical importance. And of course, the priority was just to deal with the immediate crisis. Many archival silences result from a failure of the archives to reflect the social and racial diversity of the LGBTQ+ community. Often, people from marginalized communities may understandably not wish to donate their papers or records to a state institution, which may be seen as heteronormative or just generally not trustworthy. And due to the impact of intersectional oppression, these legitimate concerns are more pronounced in BIPOC and trans communities. Our way of approaching this situation is to expand our outreach efforts as broadly as we can and engage with community members on their own terms. We will enthusiastically support and uplift any community archiving efforts so that records can stay under the control of the communities that created them. On the note of community access to archives, I want to emphasize that while we preserve these materials in our care for future generations, we believe it is even more important to provide access to anyone who wants to see or use them right now. We have descriptions of all the collections online to facilitate discovery of our holdings, and we talk about them every chance we get. As a result, the collections are used frequently, not only by students and faculty at the university, but also by scholars who come from afar and by members of the local community. Countless documentary filmmakers, authors, scholars, curators, journalists, and other creatives have used, interpreted, and disseminated these materials in their work. This is the reason we do it, so the stories can be found, compiled, amplified, and communicated beyond the archive. And I left some handouts. There's some handouts, I think there's some on the back here and some on the tables out there, where you can learn more and get in touch with us. I'll leave you with a final thought today. Members of the community benefit from having access to their history because collective memory is critical for group identity formation. Understanding where we have been goes a long way towards knowing who we are. And this, I believe, is all the more critical in a time, such as we're currently living in, of anti-LGBTQ+ backlash and repression. It's helpful for me, at least, to know about people like Donaldson King, a Charlotte Observer reporter who came out in the 1970s and began organizing. So he started support groups, he co-founded Q Notes, and he raised the veil on police harassment and entrapment of gay men. Or Sue Henry, a tireless organizer who used her bookstore as a community space and even ran for mayor as an openly lesbian write-in candidate in the 1990s. Or Blake Brockington, a trans youth who was elected prom king at his high school and went on to be an activist for trans rights and visibility as a student at UNC Charlotte. No one said it better than Josh Burford, whose job often allowed him to be in the company of LGBTQ youth. He said, "Every one of these stories that we preserve is an example to a 15, 16, 18, or 20-year-old LGBT person that they are a part of something so much bigger than the limitations of their current experience." Thanks so much.
Thank you, Anne. That was wonderful. And thank you, Dawn. We really appreciate you sharing so much about the resources that I had not known about. I know the work you're doing there, but I appreciate all that you've done. So now is our time for giving. Let there be an offering to sustain and strengthen this place, which is sacred to so many of us, a community of memory and of hope, for we are now the keepers of the dream. This month, we're celebrating and sharing our offering plate with PFLAG Salisbury Rowan. PFLAG's mission is to build on a foundation of loving families, united with LGBTQ people and allies who support one another, and to educate ourselves and our communities to speak up as advocates until all hearts and minds respect, value, and affirm LGBTQ people. PFLAG envisions a world where diversity is celebrated and all people are respected, valued, and affirmed, inclusive of their sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. We ask that you place your gift in the baskets as they make their way around the room, and you're always welcome to give online at puuc.org or by texting PUUC at the number 73256. Today's offering will now gratefully be received.
We give thanks for these generous offerings from your heart, offerings which are helping us witness and to a better world as we continue to work towards justice. I invite you now to please rise and body your spirit for our closing hymn. It's found in our great hymnal, number 170, We Are a Gentle, Angry People, and we're going to sing all 6 verses. before we extinguish our chalice, I offer thanks for all the many volunteers who helped make our worship service possible. And I also ask, it's very helpful if, before you leave the sanctuary today, if you will take your hymnals, the word eluded me for a moment, the hymnals, and place them on the cart near the piano. So let us do as we do each Sunday and take a moment to give thanks, either in our hearts or with words, for the things we are grateful today. And I want to begin by giving thanks so much for Dawn being here with us and for the wonderful message. Thank you.
I'm grateful for the opportunity to be a delegate to General Assembly for this congregation, and I'm especially grateful for the General Assembly care team and all the hard work that they've done to keep everyone balanced and okay.
And Cassette is grateful to have been a delegate at GA, which we've been having in recent days, General Assembly. And we have 2 other delegates as well, and especially grateful for the care team at GA. So.
And I'm very grateful to see Eric Dutton here this morning.
We are grateful, very grateful for the wonderful Dutton family, yes. Yes.
I'm grateful for the opportunity to come here and be a part of this wonderful family.
Yeah, Gail's grateful to be here and be part of this family. And we're always grateful to have you here too, Gail.
I'm grateful for the service and for everybody that's put it together.
For this service, for everyone's put it together, and that's all the Rainbow team. You saw some people today with our service, but more who've worked hard in recent months to work towards this.
I'm grateful for all the volunteers that showed up yesterday at Salisbury Pride.
Yes, very grateful for all the volunteers at Salisbury Pride yesterday, especially with the heat. So I really appreciate everyone doing that. I'll say I'm very grateful, always very grateful for Ann, but to hear Lady Gaga today too was wonderful. So thank you. Okay. Let's receive now this blessing written by Cricket Hall. May the world rise to accept and embrace you. May the rainbow of love enfold you. May your fluidity never be hindered. May your pronouns always be supported and your dead name forgotten. May those you invite into your life remain loyal. May your chosen family lift you up and catch you when you need it. May you be able to catch others when they need it. May you remember sensitivity is not weakness, but instead a great strength welling up inside you. And until we meet again, may you remember that you are loved and you are divine. We now extinguish our chalice, but we carry its light, its warmth, and its meaning with us until we meet again. May we go in peace, believe in peace, create peace wherever we may wander. May it be so. Now for our closing song, we make a circle, and you are invited to hold hands if you would like to do so. You may simply stand there in the circle and place your hands over your heart if you would rather do that.